The Incas are known to be the dominant peoples of South America before the arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century. Many see them as a mysterious and isolated peoples, fascinated by gold and somewhat barbaric. But there is so much more to them than that. The Incas resisted Spanish conquest, and their language and bloodlines survive in South America to this day. Their ruined mountain city of Machu Picchu remains a highly popular tourist destination for many people worldwide. The Incas were not an isolated society, but like many ancient South American imperial movements, a society that had a widespread influence over the peoples of the Andes due to their modern and effective methods of governance. The History of the World podcast, written and presented by Chris Hasler.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Volume 4, The Medieval World. Episode 86, The Inca Empire. Sometime since the last glacial maximum, humans first colonised the Americas, including South America and the regions of the Andes mountain range. These Andean cultures began to master agriculture after a long period of nomadic life and began cultivating potato and maize, among other things. This led to a more sedentary way of life, which in turn led to construction, and one of the most impressive ancient constructions of South America was the site of Chabin de Huántar. As a spiritual cult centre, the site would attract visitors from far and wide until the people responsible for its construction, the Chavin, would decline, leading to an abandonment of the site. Following the Chavin period, two more recent cultures emerged in what would become the lands of the modern country of Peru. The Nazca in the south and the Moche to the north. The story of the Chavin was covered by this podcast in the Ancient World Volume 2, while the Nazca and the Moche were both covered in the Classical World Volume 3. The Nazca are well known for the Nazca lines, large geoglyphs etched into the ground whose wonder can only fully be appreciated from the air. Towards the end of the first millennium, the lands of modern Peru would come to be dominated by a new culture called the Wari, who were covered in the previous episode. The Wari would control a large area of land, and this would be aided by the construction of a road network. The Mochi to their north would struggle to maintain their status, possibly due to climate change, but the Wari would happily move into the void. The remnants of the Mochi would eventually be supplanted by a culture called the Chimo, who would base themselves at a huge city called Chan Chan, the size of which had never been seen before in South America. This timeline brings us more or less to the end of the 12th and the beginning of the 13th century.
Cusco.
In the previous episode, we spoke of the Wari and the Chimo, but we also spoke of the Tiwanaku, who originated from the lands around Lake Titicaca, a lake on the Peruvian border with the country of Bolivia. With the decline of the Tiwanaku, there may have been a migration of peoples northwards through the mountains to the area of the Urubamba River Valley. It was a short distance south of the valley that a small settlement existed. This settlement exists to this very day as the city of Cusco, but its original settlement is thought to even predate the period in question for today's episode. Cusco was perhaps first settled around 3,000 years ago, but this date is debatable. What we do know is that it would become the centre of the Inca culture, the culture which would become the largest pre-Columbian South American empire. The Inca had their own versions of events that led to the foundation of Cusco, steeped in mythology. One such version tells the story of the siblings Manco Capac and his sister wife Mama Oclo, who were sent to Earth by their father, the sun god Inti. When the two of them located a place where their golden staff sunk into the earth, they knew that they had found their destination. It was here that they built a temple in honour of their father Inti, and therefore the city of Cusco was established. Some say that the sun god Inti was given the responsibility of establishing the Inca society by the creation god Viracocha. Viracocha is credited with the creation of the universe. After he emerged from Lake Titicaca, he was to create the moon and stars, as well as the sun god Inti. It is suggested that Viracocha destroyed the first wave of humans by either creating a flood, comparable with the biblical story, or by turning all the humans into monkeys. Viracocha then created a new wave of humans, and it was suggested that he may not have been happy with the second wave. However, if creation myths are not your thing, you may be interested to know that the settlement of Cusco was occupied by the Marcavalle, the Chanapata, and the Wari cultures before the Inca established their culture at this base city, and it could have been enhanced by a northward migration from the lands of the Tiwanaku, as we mentioned earlier.
Pachacuti.
Pachacuti was the 9th Sapa Inca of the Kingdom of Cusco. The Sapa Inca was the ruler, so it would be synonymous with a chief or a king. Manco Capac, son of Inti, is listed as the first Sapa Inca, and it was supposed that he is mythical, as were his immediate successors. Whether Pachacuti was mythical is a matter for debate. It is suggested that Pachacuti began his reign in 1438, and a number of historians believe that he actually is the first verifiable historical Sapa Inca. Pachacuti's reign is significant because it represents a notable imperial expansion of the Kingdom of Cusco, symbolising the emergence of what we call the Inca Empire. The primary language of the Incas was Quechua, and the name Pachacuti translates to the turn of the world, which could also be translated to mean the transformer of the world, or the shaker of the earth, all of which allude to the significant change and impact that Pachacuti had on his immediate vicinity. To the immediate west of Cusco was a tribal confederation called the Chanca, and the Chanca were a considerable military threat to the Kingdom of Cusco. The culmination of the Chanca-Cusco rivalry occurred at the Battle of Yahuarpampa in 1438, when the Chanca attempted once and for all to attack the city of Cusco into submission. It was due to the firm leadership of Pachacuti that the Kingdom of Cusco was able to resist and defeat the Chanca. The Chanca would lose their political power as Cusco would fully absorb them, and some would suggest that this was the event which created the Inca Empire. Some would also suggest that the military prowess of the Chanca was something that the Inca inherited from them after this victory and gave them more impetus to expand their own territory. The exact sequence of events during the middle of the 15th century are sketchy. It does appear that Pachacuti was a constructor. He is credited with the construction of the Coricancha, a temple built in the city of Cusco. It was a temple of the sun and dedicated to the sun god Inti, and its ruins are still available to visit to this day. Among the temples of the Inca, the Coricancha was among the most sacred. On the opposite side of the city, it is claimed that Pachacuti was the constructor of the fortress called the Sacsayhuaman. Large boulders were carefully cut and wedged tightly together, something that some of the Andean societies had mastered for a number of centuries before. By far the most well-known of the constructions attributed to the reign of Pachacuti was some 40 miles away in the Sacred Valley. It's called Machu Picchu.
Machu Picchu.
Despite the construction of Machu Picchu taking place in the 15th century, it remained unknown to the rest of the world until it was discovered by an American explorer called Hiram Bingham in the year 1911. In the Quechua language, the name Machu Picchu translates to Old Peak, which reflects its location high up in the mountains. Due to its relative obscurity, the site has been nicknamed the Lost City of the Incas. Machu Picchu stands at almost 2,500 feet above sea level, which seems quite strange as it appears that there was no real practical reason to go to the trouble of building a city so high in the mountains. So it could have simply been a city for the elite or an exclusive retreat, as it was certainly constructed for habitation, as evidenced by the agricultural terraces constructed at the site. Natural springs create the necessary water to feed the city's agricultural system, which may have allowed the site to house up to 1,000 individuals. The buildings at the site demonstrate the Andean construction skills of producing precisely cut rocks and boulders that fit so tightly together that there is no requirement for mortar. This is something that is demonstrated by a number of Andean civilizations from the Peruvian lands, and astonishes modern stonemasons with their accuracy. So tightly packed were the stones cut with skill and precision that not even a blade of grass or a sheet of paper could be passed between them. The highest point of the city is marked by the Intihuatana stone, which casts no shadow on both the vernal and autumnal equinoxes, the 2 times of the year equidistant from the 2 solstices, and a time of year when the length of the day matches the length of the night, marking the change of seasons, and a guide for successful farming. It would be no surprise to learn that Pachacuti opted to stay at Machu Picchu from time to time, such as its suggested exclusivity. The site is explorable to this day, and such is the attraction for international culture tourists that a new airport is currently being built to be able to handle the sheer weight of human traffic coming to this fascinating area of Peru.
Expansion.
As mentioned before, the conquest of the Chancas represented an important part of the expansion of the Inca from their settlement of origin, Cusco. Possibly using Chanca military expertise, the Inca would expand their influence rapidly during the course of the middle decades of the 15th century. It does appear that Pachacuti would encourage his son, Topa, also known as Tupac, to become directly involved in helping him to lead the empire. As Pachacuti aged, Topa would take more responsibility, so that a lot of their ultimate achievements are attributed to them both. By the end of Pachacuti's reign in 1471, the Inca Empire stretched from Lake Titicaca in the south to the lands of the Chimo in the north. The Inca would call their empire Tahuantinsuyu, and this would literally reference the joining together of 4 regions in the Quechua language. It does appear that not all assimilations of people into the Inca Empire were done aggressively, and that most peoples were permitted to continue their cultural existences without too much interference. The subdivisions of the empire were governed by local administrators, which is often a successful strategy. Peoples would be granted the comfort of food and shelter provided by the centralised state in return for their labour, such as in construction projects, including temples and roads. With the Chimo based at the huge capital city of Chanchan, their conquest would be something of significance. Many historians believe that by the time the Inca confronted the Chimo, that Pachacuti's son, Topa, was leading the charge. It may have initially been the case that the Inca reached out to the Chimo ruler, Minchancaman, to become an ally, but it appears that Minchancaman refused to submit to Inca authority, and this created the circumstances for an Inca invasion. The work that the Inca had done to improve the existing road networks made it far simpler for the Inca to mobilise their troops in preparation for invasion. We don't have a lot of detail for the Chimo-Inca War, which is speculated to have begun in the last decade of Pachacuti's life, and we don't know if either side sought alliances from surrounding tribes. Some of the weapons in use might have been projectile weapons such as the sling, or even something called the bola, which works a bit like a lasso in the manner in which it is thrown, but instead it would have been a weighted sling which would snare the victim and entangle them. It would have been a common hunting weapon normally. During the war, the unique city of Chanchan was besieged. Chanchan was the largest pre-Columbian city in South America and was the largest known adobe city, which means that its ruins are susceptible to being washed away by rainfall over time. The siege of Chanchan was good, and eventually Minchancaman had to surrender to the Inca. Minchancaman was taken prisoner, and his son, Chumancao, was placed in charge of the Chimo as a puppet ruler by the Inca. The lands of the Chimo were absorbed into the Inca Empire. In the same way that the Inca benefited from absorbing the military skill of the Chancas, they would benefit from the metalworking and artisanry of the Chimo, taking their best artisans away, along with Chimo irrigation expertise. There is little clarity about the circumstances surrounding Pachacuti's death, but it is suggested that either illness or natural causes were the reason for his passing in 1471. His son, Topa, would become the new Sapa Inca, and the expansionist ambitions of the Inca continued. Topa was the Sapa Inca until 1493. The area to the south of Lake Titicaca was traditionally home of the Aymara people, including the Lupaca kingdom, which was based around the lake itself since the collapse of the Tiwanaku just a few centuries previous. The Inca would likely have not wished to waste valuable military resources trying to subjugate Aymara chieftains and tribes, preferring to engage in diplomatic negotiations. The prize would be the rich agricultural yield that these societies could provide, and the Inca would try to attract a deal that may look to be of benefit to the Aymara tribes by giving them responsibilities and benefits while showing subservience to the Inca. Those who resisted the Inca could find themselves overrun and forcibly relocated to other areas of the empire, something that we discovered that the Neo-Assyrians were doing in the ancient Near East to their conquered foes. Topa's diplomatic and military skills enabled the Inca Empire to expand its territory from the lands of the modern country of Ecuador to the north, down along the course of the Andes mountain range, through the modern country of Peru, and then continuing south from Lake Titicaca all the way to Patagonia and the northern lands of the modern country of Argentina. Topa's death is the subject of potential intrigue, as one of his wives reportedly took exception to his choice of successor. The wife in question was Chuki Oklo, who may have believed that Topa was going to favour Capac Wari, her own son by the ruler, only to discover that he would be favouring a different son. The result was that Chuki Oklo is suggested to have poisoned Topa Inca in a bid to guarantee Capac Wari's accession, but in actual fact both Capac Wari and his mother were executed, and Topa's favoured son would become the new Sapa Inca, ruling under the name Huayna Capac. As is often the case with empires, when they overexpand, there can be difficulties when maintaining control on the fringes. The Roman Empire is a fine example of this, continuously dealing with rebellions from the Britons, the Germanic tribes, and the territories of the Near East. For the Inca, it was no different. Some tribes on their borders would show levels of defiance that could break out into open rebellion in some cases. The Incas were people of the mountains, and as such were experts in living life in mountainous terrain. This would include their military abilities, which were honed to defending and invading with good lines of sight from elevated positions. So, when it came to conflict with the peoples of the rainforests, the Incas were out of their element.
The people of the rainforests.
In general, the Incas kept their focus on the peoples of the Andes Mountains, but there were interactions with the peoples of the Amazon Basin. Due to the resources available, the Incas looked for trade opportunities with those people of the rainforest, after Pachacuti had attempted to expand Inca territory into the lands of the rainforest. Timber was an important resource, scarce in the mountains and abundant in the rainforest. But other items were also of interest, such as medicinal plants, exotic feathers, tropical fruits and textiles. As with their relationship with other peoples of the mountains, the Inca relationship with the people of the rainforest had to be nurtured by the use of diplomacy and incorporation. Those who were not incorporated may have been expected to pay tribute. Some of that tribute could have been paid in rainforest crops such as cocoa and cassava. Evidence of cocoa cultivation can be seen at the terraces of the Inca settlements of Machu Picchu and Choqquequirao, demonstrating an integration of the rainforest crop. The climate of the Amazonian rainforest was dramatically different to that of the Andean mountains, though, so when some of the eastern Amazonian tribes rebelled and resisted Inca aggression, that could be quite successful, as the Inca would be out of their comfort zone in the densely forested regions with their unfamiliar tropical diseases. The people of the rainforest did not need to have an army. They just used the cover of the rainforest and succeeded by using stealth. Although it is difficult to quantify the amount of cultural exchange between the Inca and the people of the rainforest, there was evidently an exchange. Apart from the evidence of crop exchange, we can see an exchange in artwork and imagery, with Inca art incorporating animals of the rainforests such as monkeys and jaguars. Some spiritual practices of the Inca are believed to have incorporated elements of the rituals of the rainforest, and there appears to be Amazonian loanwords in the Inca's Quechua language.
Transport.
Over 25,000 miles of roads were constructed by the Inca, connecting areas of the vast expanse of the entire empire. This road network was undoubtedly a major factor in the efficiencies of the Inca in general. In Quechua, the Inca called their system Capacñan. In translation, this would be known as the Royal Road. Two main highways respectively ran parallel with the coast, with one running through the mountain range and one running closer to the coast itself. Many smaller roads would spur off from these two main roadways. The Inca did not invent road systems in South America, but inherited the disused roads of the societies before them, especially the three societies of our previous episode, the Tiwanaku, the Wari and the Chimo. The Inca took pride in their roads and relished the challenge of being able to construct a meaningful way and means of traversing the variety of terrains that was under its control. Various materials were compacted to create the road, and bridges and stairways were sometimes necessary for more tougher terrains and crossings. Effective drainage was also a strong consideration when constructing these roadways. They were indeed an impressive feat of engineering. Just in the same way that the Royal Road of the Achaemenid Persians had enabled runners to relay news across the empire for them, a similar system called the Chasqui system enabled runners called Chasquis to carry messages across the Inca Empire. Troops could be mobilised relatively quickly thanks to the quality of the roads if there were to be any trouble or rebellion in the empire. Traders could move with ease from one place to another, and administrators could collect tribute from subjects from the extremities of the empire. Religious pilgrims would be able to travel to their spiritual destinations. Tambos were constructed along the roads as a kind of service station where travellers could rest overnight and replenish their supplies. And they could also double up as meeting places where information could be shared and diplomatic conferences could take place. In times of trouble such as famine or flood, relief could be quickly sent along the road to the affected peoples. For those who underestimate the importance of roads, this gives a strong idea of the multiple purposes of a good road network. Many ancient societies developed writing to be able to record information. But the Incas developed their own way of recording information in such a way that that information could be carried from one place to another. The method was collectively called the quipus, and was a collection of threads tied together with knots, and the nature of the threads and the knots could be interpreted as information. A number of threads called pendant cords would be tied to a main cord, and these pendant cords would be coloured differently, with each colour likely to represent different subject matter. The pendant cords would have various knots tied in them to demonstrate different forms of information. This thread loom could then be carried by runners from one place to another along the royal roads, and a quipucamayok, someone who had learned to read the quipus, in other words the knots, would translate the information contained within the loom of threads. Although completely different to writing methods, there is evidence in history of other societies of the world using knotted threads to record and convey information, but it is a very rare thing.
Religion.
We have mentioned that the primary deity of the Incas was the sun god called Inti. Inti resided in the Hanampacha, which can also be called the upper world, the home of all of the Incas' celestial deities. The ancestors which the Incas held in high regard were in the inner world, known to the Incas as the Ucupacha. The living world, where living humans were, was the third of the three realms, called Caipacha, roughly translated to mean the outer world. A number of deities existed residing in most observable objects and phenomena, such as the celestial objects, the aspects of the world such as the mountains and the sea, and natural occurrences such as thunder and lightning. The lunar deity doubled up as the deity for women's health and fertility, so we really get a feeling for the typical ancient religious human comforts provided by paganism and animism. Pleasing the deities would be carried out by performing rituals which included making offerings. These offerings would range from basic foodstuffs and precious objects all the way up to sacrifices. Sacrifices of animals such as llamas, alpacas and guinea pigs would be made to please the gods. And in the most important of ceremonies, human sacrifices would also be offered, especially if things were desperate, such as at a time of low agricultural yield, for example. The Inti Raymi is an Inca religious festival devoted to Inti, the sun god, and takes place on the winter solstice as a good omen for the new agricultural year. The festival is fondly remembered in modern Peru, with reenactments taking place in the modern age which tourists can enjoy. The festivals of the Inca were conducted like celebrations with elaborate costumes, music and dance. One such place where tourists can enjoy a reenactment of the Inti Raymi is at the Temple of Coricancha, also known as the Golden Temple, something built by the Inca in the capital city of Cusco in honour of the sun god Inti. The Sapa Inca would be obliged to show high regard for the festival of Inti Raymi and the Temple of Coricancha, as he was regarded as the direct descendant of the sun god Inti. Coricancha was the primary temple of the Inca Empire and considered as the spiritual centre of the Inca Empire. The inner walls were lined in gold, and luxury items such as golden statues within the temple really accentuated the elite status of the temple within the empire.
The arrival of the Spanish.
The Spanish arrival in Peru will be a subject for an episode in the next volume, but because this is an episode about the Inca, it makes sense for us to round off their story from their own perspective. The arrival of the Spanish brought chaos to the Inca Empire, and not least of all because of disease, probably smallpox, that the Spanish brought with them to the Americas. In 1527, the disease would kill the Sapa Inca, Huayna Capac, and the succession crisis that followed involved two of his sons vying for power against each other. This brought the Inca Empire into civil war between the two brothers. It would be Atahualpa who would best his brother Huáscar, but Atahualpa's success would be short-lived. The Spanish, led by the conquistador Francisco Pizarro, would invade the Inca Empire, capture the Sapa Inca Atahualpa, and later execute him, installing their own puppet rulers instead. Upon capturing the city of Cusco, the Spanish stripped it of its precious metal. The modern city of Lima was established as the new capital of the Spanish governorate of New Castile. The city would originally be called the Ciudad de los Reyes, translated to the City of the Kings. A rebellion helped to create a rump state of the Inca in 1537 at the city of Vilcabamba. The Spanish had to tolerate the state's existence until 1572, when the final ruler, Tupac Amaru, was captured and beheaded by the Spanish, bringing an end to the Incas' existence as a political entity. The Incas did not disappear from the world, but their political state was absorbed into the new realms of the Spanish. Quechua and Aymara are languages of the Inca that are still spoken by millions of people in South America today. The farming techniques, in particular the terraces that worked so well in the mountains, are still practiced in the same areas due to their efficiencies. The original roads of the Incas have become the foundation for the modern roadways and routes, so you can trace Inca journeys as they once may have done by leading their llamas across the terrain. Their legacy is treasured in the modern world by the residents of their lands and by visitors from all around the world, with Inca DNA still very much a part of Peruvian DNA today.
Tomorrow morning is knocking. Stock your fridge now. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or a sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
Marvel Television's Wonder Man, an 8-episode series, now streaming on Disney+.
A superhero remake, not exactly what we'd expect from an Oscar-winning director.
Action!
Simon Williams, audition for Wonder Man.
I'm gonna need you to sign this, assuming you don't have superpowers.
I'll never work again if anyone found out.
My lips are sealed.
Marvel Television's Wonder Man. All 8 episodes now streaming, only on Disney+.
Thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of the History of the World podcast on the Inca Empire, one we've been waiting a long time for. And for everyone, if you enjoy this podcast, you might be pleased to know that you can support the podcast. You can do so by visiting the History of the World podcast website. It's historyoftheworldpodcast.com. Click on the Patreon link, and there you can sign up to make a monthly contribution. When you do so, you will become a lifelong member of the History of the World podcast Illuminati, and you will qualify for gifts and rewards. They're all outlined on the Patreon page. You can follow the podcast on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Tumblr, Threads, and Mastodon. And I'm always very, very keen to hear your feedback. So if you've got any thoughts or opinions about the episode you just heard or any other episodes, I do encourage you to please drop me a line at historyoftheworldpodcast@mail.com. And your feedback will be discussed during our History of the World podcast debrief episodes, the next of which will be coming soon, so keep your eyes open for that. As for this week, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, be good.
Meet the new iSIMS, the single talent acquisition platform that's fully future-ready. It works wherever and however you hire, with insights no one else offers. One solution that fits seamlessly into your existing tech stack, which is why IT and HR leaders trust it. With the best of enterprise-grade software and AI, iSIMS helps you identify and secure the right talent faster. iSIMS, powering exceptional hiring. Learn more at isims.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
The History of the World podcast, written and presented by Chris Hasler. Please consider making a financial contribution by going to the historyoftheworldpodcast.com website and clicking on the Patreon link. Email the show at historyoftheworldpodcast@mail.com. And don't forget to join our social media at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. See you next time.